Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Live Through Jesus podcast with Courtney Gilmore. On this episode, an ally to the allies and an enemy to the enemies. This is 1 Samuel 18. Have you ever known someone that is your greatest ally if they're on your side? But if they're against you, then they're your greatest opponent. Have you ever known anyone like that? I had a boss like that one time. I wouldn't say that he was my greatest enemy, but if he was on your side, if he thought your idea was good, he would promote it and he would make sure it happened. There was basically no way that you would have any problems if this guy was on your side. And if anything arose, you would go to him, he would fix it, and everything was good. And he was great when he agreed with you, when he thought what you were doing was good. But if you ever told him something that he did not agree with, but maybe every other person wanted you to do, if you started to do this thing, it was like he was against you at every turn. Every single time that you tried to make it work, you're like, well, what about this? What about this? Nope, never. It was never going to happen. And I finally just realized that it's like, if he's not on my side, there's no point in even trying it because it's going to be an uphill battle the whole time. Everybody's going to be frustrated. And even if, I end up getting to do the thing that I want to do, it's not going to turn out well because he's going to, be difficult the whole way through, and the whole thing won't end up being successful anyway. And that is kind of what God is like. If God is on your side, then you can have no greater ally. If you have any problems, you go to him, he fixes it. If it's in his plan, right? If he wants you to do that, the thing that you're wanting to do, then it will happen. That's kind of what we talked about before whenever we've talked about praying in his name. It's like, if this is what he wants and you ask him for that, then all's a go, right? But if God doesn't want you to do something, if what you're doing is not in his plan, he's going to be against you at every turn. And it's going to be a constant uphill battle, lots and lots of frustration along the way. And you're going to lose. It's never going to work. And you're going to figure out, never should have even tried. No point in going against the Almighty God, right? And that's what we see in our story today. God is with David, therefore, David's successful at everything. God is not with Saul, and every single thing that Saul tries, God's like, nope, not going to work. Nope, not going to work. Good try, never mind. All the way through. So we're going to talk about the story of David and Saul after David has defeated Goliath. Remember, Saul liked David before this, but now Saul begins to get jealous. And so we're going to talk about that story. And then we're going to talk about how we can make sure that God is on our side, that he's fighting for us and not against us. So like I said, he just finished the battle with Goliath. And this is 1 Samuel 18. And it says, as soon as he finished speaking to Saul, this is David, as soon as David finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. So this is Saul's son, Jonathan. It says that he is just instantly drawn to David, which we've talked about before, is usually what happens with a lot of people. And it's as if he's his own soul. It's like they're brothers. They're just so close together. And then it says, Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. So David no longer is going between Saul, playing music for Saul, and going back and feeding his dad's sheep. He's just in the service of Saul now forever. He says, you're a good musician. You help me whenever I'm sad. You also helped me in the situation with this Philistine. So you're a good warrior and I need you. And I want you to be around for anything that I need you for. And so I want you to stay. And then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. So this is kind of like a promise, like they bound each other, like, again, like blood brothers. You're binding yourself to that person. You're saying, I'm going to be loyal to you. I'll have your back all the time, no matter what. We're tight. And then Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him, and he gave it to David. And he gave him his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. Now, why would he do this? Did he give David these things because David wasn't a warrior? He didn't have these things, but Jonathan sees the potential in him. Did he give those things to him, which do belong to the prince, right? These are special pieces of armor. This is, what is given to the prince of Israel, not just any old armor. So does he give this to David to show, like, hey, you are like my brother. Anything that, I got from dad, you should also have. And now you're a warrior, and I want you to have these things. Is it because he's trying to show how much he actually cares about David? Who really knows why Jonathan would give him all of these things? But it is kind of a foreshadow of what is to come, because the prince is the one that would normally have all of this gear, and it would be handed down from the king to his son, but it's being given to David, who is kind of the prince now. Whether Jonathan is aware of that or not, he is the one that will succeed Saul as king. And so he now has what the prince would normally have. And then it says, David went out and he was successful wherever Saul sent him, so that Saul set him over the men of war. This was good in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. So Saul says, hey, I'm going to make you one of the commanders of my army. He doesn't take Abner's spot, but he is one of the commanders of the army. And it says every time he goes out to battle, he's successful. And as they were coming home one time, when David was returning from striking down the Philistines, the women came out from all the cities of Israel. And it says they were singing and they were dancing to meet the king of Saul, with tambourines and with songs of joy and with musical instruments. And they sang to one another as they celebrated that Saul has struck down thousands and David has struck down 10,000s. Now, obviously, this would not make Saul very happy, because the victory, yes, has come for all of Israel, but David, they're saying, is a better warrior than even Saul. And so they're like, we were very thankful for Saul. He saved us in our first battle, and he's helped us along the way, but David's an even better warrior than him. And so it says that this makes Saul very angry, and he's displeased. And it says, look, they've ascribed 10,000 to David, and they've only ascribed thousands to me. What more can he have but the kingdom? So it says he has everything but the throne. I have that only above him. He has all of the favor from the people. He's getting all the praise and all the glory, and I just have the position. And that happens sometimes. If you've ever noticed how when someone is a bad leader, other people end up doing their job, and they might have that title, but they don't get any glory for it, and the other person is the one that's actually doing what they should be doing in the first place. And that's what happens here with David and Saul. And it says that Saul eyed David from that day on. And so he's like, I've got my eye on you. I don't like what's going on here. And then the next day, a harmful spirit from the Lord rushed upon Saul, and he raved within the house while David was playing the lyre, which is the harp, as he did day by day. And Saul had a spear in his hand. And then he hurled the spear, because he thought, I will pin David to the wall. But David evaded him twice. And Saul was afraid of David, because the Lord was with him, and departed from Saul. And that's the key. So God allows this troublesome spirit to come on Saul again. And this time, while David is playing, it does not make Saul feel better. His music does not make him feel better. And he's got the spear in his hand, and he hurls it against the room at David. thinking that he will kill him. And it says that David has dodged this twice. So, if he throws something else at him after he throws the spear and misses, we don't know. We also don't know what in the world is David thinking. Hopefully it doesn't seem like he realizes yet that Saul was actually trying to kill him. I'm assuming that he's thinking that this troubled spirit has come over Saul just like it always has. And at this moment, the music is not making him feel better, and he just goes into a rage and starts throwing things across the room, and that's what he has in his hand. If you've ever been around anybody that, has a fit whenever they get mad, oftentimes just whatever's in their hand, they'll throw across the room. And so maybe that is what David thinks is happening here with Saul, but it doesn't seem that he's quite aware that Saul is purposefully trying to kill him at this time. But, Saul's not successful. David is able to evade him. And now Saul's even more afraid of him because he's like, I tried to kill him and I can't. And that's because God is with David and he's not with Saul. And not only is he not with Saul, but he's against Saul now because Saul is against David and God is for David. And that's going to be kind of what we talk about the whole rest of the time. But you see how this works. And then in verse 13, it says, so Saul removed him from his presence, and he made him commander of 1,000. And he went out and he came in before the people. And David had success in all the undertakings, for the Lord was with him. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fearful awe of him. But all of Israel and Judah loved David, for he went out and came in before them. So once Saul wasn't able to kill him, he's like, you know what? I don't want you around. Go and fight my battles. And it says every time he went out to fight, he was even more successful than the time before. And, Saul, we find out pretty soon, he's trying to get him killed. He wants him to go out to battle because he thinks, I couldn't kill him. That might be, cause me more problems. Anyway, I'm just going to let the Philistines kill him. And inadvertently, he is making the people like David even more because he's putting David in front of the people. And the more that the people are around David, the more that they like him. And then the more battles he fights in and the more success he gets, then the more people like him. And so Saul is actually causing himself more problems because God is for David. He's not going to allow Saul's plan to work. He's not going to allow the Philistines to kill him. And so now he's getting more successful, more exposure, and everybody is liking him even more. And so then it says, Saul said to David, here's the elder daughter, Meribah. I will give her to you for a wife. Only be vigilant for me and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul thought, let not my hand be against him, but let the hand of the Philistine be against him. So that's what I was telling you before, is that he's saying, I will just let the Philistines kill him. Why should I kill him? And then everybody be mad at me. And so he offers his daughter in marriage to him. Now, remember, he was supposed to have already given his oldest daughter to the man that killed Goliath. And David was that man, but he hasn't offered her to him yet. And now he's not offering her to him because he has killed Goliath. He's saying, I'll give her to you if you'll go and kill some more Philistines. And David says to him, but who am I and who are the relatives of my father's clan in Israel that I should be the son-in-law of the king? He's like, I'm not worthy of something like that. Why would you give me your daughter? And so David's humble. And then in verse 19, it says, but at the time when Merib, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, then she was given to Adriel, the Maholathite, for a wife. So he just gives her away. He changes his mind. Maybe it's because David says, I'm not worthy. And he's like, okay, whatever. Or, most likely got some kind of offer from this person that he thought, well, better suited. And so Saul didn't even honor his agreement the second time, because remember, the first time he had told him he would give him to him for killing David. And then it says in verse 20, now Saul's daughter, Michal, loved David. And then they told Saul this, and this pleased him because he thought, Let me give her to him, that she may be a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. And so he's thinking, sure, let's give Michal to him. She likes him anyway. And maybe she can get in on the inside and be, with me against David. So he said to David a second time, you shall now be my son-in-law. And so he commanded his servants, speak to David in private and say, behold, the king has delight in you, and all of his servants love you. Now then, become the king's son-in-law. And so Saul sent his servants to say those words to David. And David said, does it seem to you a little thing to become the king's son-in-law, since I am a poor man and I have no reputation? And then the servants told this to Saul, and it says that this is what Saul says to tell David. He says, say this, the king desires no bride price except for 100 foreskins of the Philistines, that he may be avenged of the king's enemies. So he's saying, yeah, I know you don't have any money, so I'm going to ask for what you do have to offer me, which is your skills as a warrior. So I want you to go and kill 100 Philistines, and then you can have her as your wife. And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law. So presumably he's thinking, okay, that'd be different because I will have earned it, even though obviously it earned it with Goliath already. And then it says, before the time had expired, David arose and he went along with his men, and he killed 200 of the Philistines. And he brought their foreskins, which were given in full number to the king, that he might become the king's son-in-law. Saul gave him his daughter Michal as a wife. But when Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him, Saul was even more afraid of David. And so Saul was David's enemy continually. Then the commander of the Philistines came out to battle, and as often as they came out, David had more success than all the servants of Saul, so that his name became highly esteemed. And so David went out and fought the Philistines, and it says that he didn't just kill 100 Philistines, he killed 200 Philistines. And then he brought their foreskins back to David as proof that he had killed him. Now remember, whenever he killed Goliath, he brought Goliath's head back to him. But Saul had this time requested that he bring him the foreskins. And remember how he called him Goliath the uncircumcised Philistine? The people who had their foreskins cut off were the ones that were circumcised, which were the believers. So all unbelievers were uncircumcised. And so not only was this to show that he had killed them, but also kind of a symbolic gesture to say, oh, you don't believe in God? Well, I bet you do now that he killed you. And so he's saying, making them look like believers by cutting off their foreskins, saying you now must believe in God, even though obviously they have no consciousness. But he's just trying to show a picture of the fact that once God is able to defeat you and have that power over you, you should actually believe in him now. And then he gives his daughter to David to be his wife. But then again, all the things that he keeps trying, he didn't get killed by the Philistines when he went out to kill them. As a matter of fact, he killed more than he was even asked to. And then it says that when he gave Michal to David as his wife, he was thinking that, if I give her to him, then she'll be my ally on the inside. Turns out, no, she really loves him. She's not going to be against him. And so everything he does is thwarted. And the reason for that is because God was with David and God was against Saul. And so every time that Saul sent him out to battle, then he just achieved more success than he did before. And then as his success grew, then so did the people's love for him. The more he sent him out to try to get him killed, then the more successful David was, the more Philistines he killed, the more people thought of him. And it says that, it's kind of like he was a man's man. Everybody liked him as they got to know him. And so he was trying to get him killed and get the people not to like him. And instead, he got the complete opposite of that. Everybody that was around him seemed to love him, including Saul's own children, Jonathan and Michael. And so Saul didn't have any allies against David, and that includes God. God was also not Saul's ally. And so the reason for David's success and for Saul's failure is because God was with David and he was against Saul. And though God had already rejected Saul and chosen David, that wasn't going to change. Saul could have helped himself by at least not going against David, but by going against David, he pitted himself against God. And that was his biggest mistake. Being jealous and deciding that he doesn't like David anymore is what really caused Saul all of his problems. He would have been better off just accepting the fact that he was, rejected by God and going on and being the best king he could be instead of going against David. But that's what happens when we go against God's plans. The more we try to fight against it, then the more frustrated we're going to be and the more we're going to fail. Everything we try isn't going to work. We're just going to be continuously frustrated. God will be our very most important ally, but he's also the worst enemy you could ever have. If he's against you, nothing you do is going to work. Job 5:12 says that he frustrates the devices of the crafty so that their hands cannot achieve success. And that's what he's doing here with Saul. I'm not going to let you be successful in going against David. I'm going to frustrate all of your tricky tries. And so David was a success again because God was on his side. Saul was failing because God was against him. And if God's on our side, then nothing and no one is going to be able to stand against us. But if God's not on our side, or even worse, he's completely against us, then we're always going to be fighting an uphill battle and we'll have no chance of victory. All of our striving is going to be in vain. It's going to be like Solomon says in Ecclesiastes over and over, just a chasing of the wind. It's completely pointless. It's only going to bring us tears and pain. So I'm going to read you several verses that have to do with this. The first is 1 Chronicles 16:21 and 22. And it says, he permitted no man to do them harm. He rebuked kings for their sakes, saying, don't touch my anointed ones and do my prophets no harm. So God was not going to allow anyone to hurt his people. He rebukes them and says, you can't touch them. I'm not going to let you harm them. And so when God fights for you, you can be victorious. Isaiah 54:17 says that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you will condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is from me. And so we inherit God's protection. We inherit, as his children, the ability for all of the weapons that people try to, hurl at us, they won't succeed because God is on our side. Ecclesiastes 2:26 says, for to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he's given the busyness of gathering and collecting, only to give to one who pleases God. This is all vanity and a striving after the wind. So, if you please God, if you're on his side, then he'll give you wisdom and knowledge and joy. But if you are a sinner, meaning you're going against him, you're disobeying him, rebelling against him, resisting him, then he's going to give you work to do. And then when you finish that work, then he's going to take everything that you earned from it and he's going to give it to the person that does please him. And so all your work will be done in vain. That's what it's like when we fight against God. When we fight against God, we'll never win, and all the work we did will be completely pointless. It's just going to make us tired and upset in the process, and it's not going to achieve the goal that we have for it because God's not going to allow it. And so how do we make sure that we're on God's side and he's not against us? Well, we have to get on his side, right? We can't actually expect God to get on our side. Our side isn't always right. So we have to line ourselves with God's side, and then he will be for us. If we're on his side, then he'll be for us. But if we're not, then he is going to, frustrate all of our plans. Psalm 33:10-11 says, "The Lord brings the counsel of the nations to nothing. He frustrates the plans of the people. The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the plans of his heart to all generations." So to be on God's side, then we have to learn God's ways and we have to follow them. Don't resist them. Don't rebel against him. Do everything he tells you to do. Say everything that he tells you to say. And then you'll be sure that you're on his side. And then you will know that he won't be against you. 1 Samuel 12:14-15 says, "If you will fear the Lord and serve him and obey his voice and not rebel against the commandment of the Lord, and if both you and the king who reigns over you will follow the Lord your God, it will be well. But if you don't obey the voice of the Lord, but you rebel against the commandment of the Lord, then the hand of the Lord will be against you and your king." So he's going to be for you if you're for him, and against you if you're against him. And if God is for you, then nobody's going to be able to stand against you and prevail. Romans 8:31 says, "What shall we say then to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us?" And the answer is obviously no one. No one can be against us if God is for us. No one can win a battle with the Almighty God. He fights for his children just like any loving parent does. And also, if you're against his children, then he's fighting against you. Every parent wants to fight for their kids. If somebody is doing something wrong against their kids, they will fight for them. And that's what God does because we're his children. But only when our ways align with his. If our kids are doing something that's wrong according to us, we're not going to fight for them. But if their ways align with ours, if they're doing what we want them to do and people are going against them, then we're going to fight them all day long. And you can't win a fight with a mama bear, right? Whenever a mom gets, or a dad, obviously, decides to fight against you because you're fighting against their kid, then you're going to have a hard time winning that battle. And that's what it's like if you go against God's children. And so we all have a choice today. If we ally ourselves with God, then he will be our greatest ally. But if we go against him, then he's going to come against us and we're going to lose. We're not going to be successful if we are trying to go against God. And so seek to know him, know his ways, and work to follow those ways so that you can be on his side and he will be for you and not against you. And that's all I have for today. We're going to break for Christmas, and I hope that y'all have a very, very Merry Christmas. I hope that you have lots of time with family and worship Jesus, who has come to this earth to give us a new life so that we will be able to live one day forever with him. We celebrate this time of year that he came to live on this earth, to show us how to live, and then to die for us so that we can live for him. And so worship him this holiday season and have a wonderful time with your family. And then I'll see you back at the first of the year, and we'll continue on with our story with David. If you would like to maybe catch up on all of the past Bible studies, during our break time, and you'd like to have this written study, then go to livethroughjesus.substack.com. Subscribe there as a paid subscriber. It's only $6 a month or $60 a year, but you can do that. Give yourself a Christmas gift, give it to someone that you know, and then begin to really get into the Bible and study. That'd be a great thing for you to do if you so choose. And then you can also become a free subscriber, and you'll get blog posts that just don't teach the lesson, go through the whole story, but just teach what we can learn from it. make sure that you do one of those things. If you don't want to pay, just become a free subscriber. And I am behind on all of those blog posts for all of you free subscribers, but I'm going to use this time, holidays, while I'm trying to, spend time with my family. I'm also going to try to catch up on all of those blog posts. So bear with me on that, and we'll get everything back squared away at the start of the year. That is the hope. So again, have a very Merry Christmas, and I'll see you back at the first of the year. Thanks, and have a good day.